Hi, I'm Mrs. Lindsay Sigman, and I am the teacher of AP English, Literature, and Composition. It's my pleasure to be teaching this course this semester. I've taught this course for a number of years at this point, so it's been an adventure navigating the first few weeks of what the class looks like in the hybrid environment. But the students have been wonderful, and we are well into several of the ongoing course skills already, including our first novel. So that's really exciting for me to see the excellent work that they've been doing and the way they've adapted, to this new form of school. In the class, one of the first things we start by talking about, and that I kind of have the students, explore with me and then kind of clarify the expectations is, what is this course? So when we look at the name of it, which comes from the College Board, AP English, Literature, and Composition, in there are two of the core elements and the skills that we really work on a semester-long basis, but also in our day-to-day work. They'll be doing these elements pretty regularly each day. And that is, the literature piece. That's the reading piece. We're really working on tackling oftentimes very, challenging and complex texts, both in their vocabulary and their structure, as well as sometimes in their kind of significance and thematic concepts. And we'll be looking at, how authors piece those together, and then how do we interact with that, on the reading end. As part of that, we work on a lot of the skills and strategies that you need to read successfully. A lot of times for students in this course, English is something they love and oftentimes something that they've been very successful with in the past. So one of the things that's important, and you can kind of echo them, this to them if you're hearing any frustrations on the home end of things, is that I really see part of my job in this course to find texts that will present a challenge to the student. Yes, we have a number of wonderful, digital resources like SparkNotes out there to help you figure out meanings of text, but that's not our goal in this course. Our goal is really to build those skills and strategies for yourself as you're navigating difficult reading or text. And so the students have daily opportunities to read both some of our ongoing longer book length text, as well as excerpts and short works such as short stories and poetry, to really hone, how do you tackle a text like this? How do you build some of those, engaging, what we would call metacognitive strategies, thinking about your thinking and how you interact with what you are reading, and then how do you explain that to somebody else. And so we've spent a lot of time in the first few weeks talking about that, practicing that, and building that. This links to another thing I talk about with the students early on, is that this is a college level course. However, it's a college level course in high school. So the beauty of that is, while I'm designing lessons and pulling materials from College Board and using text really geared towards college level work, here in the high school environment, I'm still offering a number of those added supports. And so, yes, I'm expecting you to read this. I'm expecting you to work with this text. I'm expecting you to, take notes and come prepared to discuss and write about it. But I'm also offering you, graphic organizers and check-ins along the way to make sure that you are really able to be successful with this. One of the major goals I talk to the students about throughout this course is for each of them to really figure out, how they work as a learner, particularly as, a reader and a writer and a thinker about these kinds of things. What do you need to be successful at the different steps in that process? Setting up your reading. When you're actively reading, how do you make sure that you're taking away the information you need from that text? And then, what are you doing with it? Do you use Post-it notes? Do you take notes? Do you type? Do you handwrite? Do you record certain things? How do you prepare then to do what you need to do later with it, whether that's writing an essay, engaging in a formal class discussion, or creating some kind of project in response to it. And so we have started working on that, and we will continue to work on that. Sometimes it's hard for students to really think about, is this working for me? Would I rather choose something else? Because, if they're, used to doing school, they kind of just do what we ask them to on the teaching end. And so a lot of times I'll present a note-taking strategy or a method, but then I'll give them opportunities to evaluate, does this work for me? If yes, great, use it. If not, what would be an alternative way that you could show me that you are understanding what you're reading, or how could we tackle that? That requires a lot of initiative on the students' parts. If they're struggling, they need to get to a place where they're comfortable saying, this is not working for me, or I'm falling behind here. And so one of the things that you could do on the home end that would really help me out is just encourage your student. And that's hard, especially in an AP class, where you're expected, to be, top notch in this field. Sometimes it's hard to admit this is difficult for me. But if you're able to do that, then I am better able to, offer those alternative strategies or ways of looking or tackling something that may really help them to, use their strengths that they have and show them and get, credit for them. So in the title, in addition to AP English Literature, the second half of it is the and composition piece. And so writing is another huge element of this course. They will be writing in informal and formal ways every week, often every day. When it breaks down, it comes out to about an essay every week in the course. That isn't always regularly spaced out. But they're constantly engaging in especially analytical writing, really digging into meaning in the text they're reading and being able to provide evidence and then explanations for those ideas. And so again, this is something that we will continue to work on. And my job here, as I see it, is really to find if there's areas you're struggling in, how can I support you? But also if you're really showing, success and connection to these different elements, how can we take these strengths and continue to build on them? What does that next level of, I use the word sophistication with them a lot. If you're successful in this area of academic writing, then how can we continue to explore levels of sophistication so that it isn't simply about getting the grade, but also about examining ways that you can use your individual strengths, to really set yourself apart as a writer and build the style and voice that really go beyond simply saying, an accurate interpretation of something to making it interesting and creative and something that's more personalized to who you are. Though the exam measures those two particular elements, if they choose to take the College Board test, the course also really emphasizes the speaking and listening aspect of it. And we'll be looking at some creative ways to use technology to help the whole group do that. But especially on days when they're here in person, they will still be interacting with one another. And when they're at home, we'll be looking at, how can they still be sharing what they know? Are there tech tools we can use to do that? Are there other means that you can publish and communicate with others? And so we'll be really tackling the hybrid model from the stance of, what are the opportunities here to learn some of these other skills? And how do we reimagine some of the ways we discuss with one another and we share our ideas on these things with one another? Right now, our class text is the novel Jane Eyre. So we are well on our way into this novel. With this book, students have been keeping something called a dialectical journal. It's essentially just 2 columns of notes. So the left-hand column is really for their evidence, what they're observing in the text, and then they kind of note why. The right-hand column is where they explain their thinking. They dig in a little deeper. And we've been talking about, the extent to which that works for the way they think. This is a really useful note-taking strategy when we start getting into writing some of their lengthier papers, because it really helps clarify the core aspects that go into that. So again, you can be asking them questions about what's going on in Jane Eyre. How do they like it? I tell them it's okay not to like something, but not liking something or loving something is not an excuse to, check out on having a critical opinion. I can love something and still dig in and analyze it. And similarly, even if I dislike the author's story or I disagree with his or her viewpoint on something, I should still be able to kind of critically observe what elements are present in a text and why the author might be using them in that way. And so we'll really work on that skill as we work through this text. Some of the other texts that we will likely look at this semester are Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, Shakespeare's King Lear, and Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. In addition, students will read a lot of excerpts from other texts to expose them to different styles and authors, a wealth of poetry. They're already, I think we're over 20 some poems that they've each compiled in a collection at this point in time. And they will also be, in addition to the book they selected over the summer, selecting another more recently published, contemporary classic book to explore later in the semester. And we'll be evaluating, how do we determine whether or not certain texts should count as a classic and be considered for that scholarly examination. Other things that would be important to know, we are starting to build a class project, kind of looking at how literature connects to the real world. And so students will be collaborating with the entire class to create essentially a digital literary magazine. And so in addition to kind of the exam tested skills of reading and writing analytically and critically, we'll be doing some more creative writing and more kind of real world writing, articles. They'll be interviewing, they'll be creating things and looking at how the world of literature from an academic standpoint also translates into more of the day-to-day cultural kind of discussion about ideas. And so they'll be creating a lot of pieces for that as well. They have ongoing projects with their novel. They're always working on things with poetry and vocabulary. And again, they have something going on with the class project or creative writing. So those are all things that you could ask your child about. And they should really be able to tell you how they're doing with it, what they're working on, what their end goal is. We talk a lot about the goal and then the steps that you need to get there. Again, trying to prepare them for that more college or career model of you're not always going to have somebody giving you that step-by-step broken down kind of checklist to get to the end goal. How do you generate those kinds of things for yourself? And again, if they struggle with that, I'm here to help them develop it or even provide it to them. But the goal really being that they're starting to take more initiative and be able to independently figure out what works for them to get to that end target. Finally, you'll hear a lot more about this as the semester goes on, but for students interested in taking the College Board exam, we will go over the direct released materials from that AP exam, and they will practice elements of that, and we'll talk about all the things necessary to make sure that they are prepared. That will include study session options through the spring semester to make sure that the content and the skills and just the expectations of that exam are fresh for them as they go to take it. So if you do have any questions at any time, please don't hesitate to contact me. Obviously, if your student needs something, encourage them to actively, reach out, talk to me in person, reach out through Schoology message or through Google Meet or anything like that they need. But if you particularly have any questions or needs, you can always email me at lsigman, that's LSIGMAN @cocalico.org. And if you would prefer to talk through phone call, you can always call the high school office and they would put you through to my extension and I'd be happy to call you back. So I look forward to being in contact with all of you. It is a pleasure teaching your children this semester. It's wonderful to be back with them. And again, if there's anything you need, please let me know. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.